Well, good morning, everybody. It's great to be with you. It's great to be back. I want to give you a little sort of synopsis of where I've been for the last several weeks. Many of you know we're coming to a close of 25 years of our history of being a church. We'll finish up that on Easter Sunday, and it's going to be incredible. I've got so many things planned for that day. It's going to be awesome, and I want you to all be a part of it. So I wanted to just go to each of our locations, and I wanted to see what God was doing at all those locations. I think sometimes it's good for the lead guy to go and try to assess how we're doing in these locations that we have. And I went down into the children's ministry and the youth ministry, and everywhere we have a location currently, God's just doing some really neat things. They're growing, they're seeing new people saved and coming to know the Lord, which is awesome. And then regionally, we begin building some networks with other churches in Galax all the way to Jonesboro. And also globally, God's doing some amazing things as well. We have a team right now on the Ivory Coast. They've been speaking to over 3,000 church leaders while they've been there. They'll be on their way home. And we have a regional team down in Honduras as I speak, working with pastoral leaders. So I just want to give you a report today from all my journeys that the church is alive and well. It's doing very well. God's hand of favor is upon us, and thank you for believing in our mission and our vision of all God wants us to do. And thank you for being here this weekend. So we started last week. Brittany and Robbie kicked off Better Together, and they talked a little bit about marriage and if you're single or if you're in a dating relationship, how those relationships can expand with God's help and be all that God wants them to be. Today I want to continue. I want to talk a little bit about friendship. And let me just clarify out of the gate that friendship to me is a big deal. Now, for those of you who have big families, I'm sure it's different for you, but I'm an only child. And so much of my life has been built around friends. And I wanted to talk about that today. I hope it'll be a help to you because I believe our life is better together with some great friends. All of us need friends. I have been studying because sometimes when I'm in message prep mode, I read the Bible and I'm all the time thinking about a message, but I've had some weeks off. And so I just went back to the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament written by Solomon, one of my favorite books, and Ecclesiastes, another book that he's written, wisest guy to have ever lived. And I wanted to expound on a few things that I've taken from his wisdom. And here's the first thing in Proverbs chapter 18, verse 24. Solomon says this, he says, a person with many companions, the true word there is friends, may come to ruin. But there is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. I think it's an interesting verse. When I read that in my devotionals, I went back to that verse and I thought it's exactly opposite how we feel, right? Because most of us think the more friends we have, the better life would be. But Solomon really defines it here, and he says that's really not the case. A man of many companions, of many friends, may come to ruin. Several years ago, I did a message series, Show Me Your Friends, I'll Show You Your Future, and it seemed to resonate with many, many people in our church, and so I wanted to build on that. We're going to do a two-parter about friendship today and next week, and I hope today is a help for you. So I want to start with this question. If you were to die today, and by all means, I'm not a prophet. I hope, obviously, that doesn't happen. But if you were to die today, how many friends do you think would show up at your funeral a few days from now? How many friends? Now, I'm not talking about family. They're contractually bound, right? I mean, they have to show up, okay? I'm talking about friends. Let me give you a glimpse sort of inside a pastor's view that many of you would never know. A man dies at 60 years of age and part of our church, and so they call and I go to this family because the family is obviously grieving. He dies rather abruptly, and I'm trying to help the wife and the children get through this and just offer some comfort and prayer and see if they need some food, all those kinds of things. When you lose somebody you love, how your world stops. But eventually, we get to this question because we're going to host the family of what venue should we have the Celebration of Life service. We have several different venues from, that seat 100 to 750 people. And so I will generally ask the wife, how many friends do you think will come, and family, so that we can host this, your family in the right way. And in the early days, this is always sort of the case. The wife would say, oh my goodness, all of our neighbors. He was loved by all of our neighbors. His co-workers, all of his co-workers will come. His high school buddies. He's kept up with a lot of his high school friends. I'm sure all of them will come. And then I would talk to the kids, and I would ask the children, I said, what do you guys think? I'm sure you'll have a few friends. And they would always say, my dad was great. All of my friends love my dad. All of my friends will come. And so normally I would see that number go from somewhere around 100 to normally it would go to 400 or 500 people. And so we would always, in the early days, schedule these things in the biggest venue that we had. And the day came for the Celebration of Life service, and be 80 to 100 folks show up. And then I would have to find myself with an already grief-stricken family, help them through another set of grief, and they would normally ask, I don't understand why his friends didn't show up. So after several years, I do it a lot differently today, and I have lots of help as our, being a part of Highlands. We have some amazing people who help me with this. Every now and then I may still get called, and I'll sort of go into protection mode right from the beginning. This family's obviously grieving, and I'll say, I'm sure all of his friends or all of her friends would love to be at his Celebration of Life service or her Celebration of Life service, but the economy's sort of hard today. People have very select dates of vacation. It's hard to get time off. Food and expenses and travel and hotel and such. You see what I'm doing here? I'm just protecting an already grieving family so that I don't ever have to have the conversation again after the service. Why didn't his friends, why didn't her friends show up? Real interesting to me, this verse says, a person with many companions can come to ruin. A lot of theologians have translated this differently. Some says if you have many friends, you need to show yourself friendly, but it seems like the most accurate translation is a man of many friends could come to a huge disappointment. We could have a huge disappointment because they think that their many companions are their friends, and they're really not friends in the truest definition of friend. So I want to give you what I would call, I wish somebody had given it to me when I was much younger, what I would call sort of a locker room talk today about friends and friendships. I think it's such a huge deal to all of us. So I think the best place to start is let's define what true friendship is. Let's define it. I put it up here on the screen for you. I think a true friend is when you know and you are known. When you know and are known. In other words, you stop pretending, you take the mask off, and you say, this is who I really am, and the other person accepts you like that, and they take the mask off, this is who I really am, and you accept them. You're known and you're being known. You recognize there are no perfect people. We all have faults, but you love them and you decide to serve your friend. A lot of what friendship is about is that you care enough about your friend that you actually put their interests ahead of yours and vice versa. And when they're blessed, you celebrate with them. You're their cheerleader. You cheer them on. A true friend is about knowing and being known, serving and being served, loving and being loved. Committing to a friendship is such a powerful thing. Again, friendships are a big deal. Now, the guy that I see at the gas station, I'm sort of a creature of habit, and I see the same guy. He's been there for several years when I go get my gas. The lady I speak to at the dry cleaners, the lady that helps me at the drive-through window at my bank. I don't go to the gym, but just per se, the buddy that's been working out with you at the same time for the last 6 months or so, they're all very nice people. They really are. And I'm friendly to them. I'm sure you are in all those daily exchanges. But here's where this thing about friendship gets a little confusing. Are all those day-to-day acquaintances really true friends? You'd be amazed how many of us think they're really our true friends. I would say the better way of saying this is that they are friends because of circumstances. So the first group of friends I'd love for you to write down is what I would call circumstantial friendships. We all have those in our life. Now, occasionally, a circumstantial friend can become a true friend, but not often. Usually what happens is you go to the bank one day, and that lady or that gentleman who's helped you at the drive-through window for all these years is no longer there. You go to the gas station, and someone else is there that you don't know. You go by the dry cleaners or these places of habit that we normally go, and you wondered what happened, but you're busy, so you think about it for a second, and you go your own way. This guy's been at the gym with you for 6 months, and all of a sudden, he's not there. He's gone AWOL. Where did he go? So I would just say, jot down a little note to self here. These kinds of friends come and go. Now, they're not fake friends. No, absolutely not. I mean, you're not being insincere by talking with them and being kind and having small conversations and such. But what we have to keep in mind is what brought you together was a set of circumstances, and circumstances change. And when they do, there's a strong likelihood that you may never see those people again in your life. So be friendly, of course, but be careful about counting circumstantial friends in your attendance projections for your funeral, okay? They may be disappointment. I remember at my other church that I was at for 25 years before coming to Highlands, there was a gentleman in our church leadership, and he had worked for the same company for 30 years. This used to be the way it was. And he loved this place. I mean, he started out at the bottom. He rose to management in the company. It was a mining machine company, and he elevated several co-workers in the company, the part that he oversaw, and he just loved it. I mean, he was there. He was a very, very loyal employee. Well, a new company, Cole sort of turns down, and a new company comes in, and they let my buddy go. And they wanted to bring their own management and such. And it crushed him. I mean, it just devastated him. And so now he doesn't have anything to do, so he's coming by my office quite often and telling me what a bozo the new CEO is and how he's going to run his company over the cliff and such. And then he tells me, you know, all of my coworkers that I actually elevated and promoted, did you know, Al, none of those guys have even called and checked on me here in the last month since I've been gone, and they were like my family. They were like my family. And every week or so, he would come by and we'd go through this same scenario over and over. And he was so disappointed. And, you know, the company was going to take a dive and such. And he was just getting very bitter about the whole situation. And one day, he probably catches me and I got so many things to do. And he comes by and I just said, hey, I want to tell you something, my friend. God's moved you out. And the day after you left, they had a plan in place of how they were going to replace you and how they were going to move forward in the company. And he just lost it. You know, he just lost it. It was striking to me. A couple of weeks go by, and he's knocking on my door again, and he said, you know, Alan, he said, what you told me was absolutely true. They moved on without me, and I believed otherwise. I really did. That I mattered, that I was family to them. I would be friends with them to the end. But I learned I was part of this company where the bottom line spoke the loudest. And he said, you know, I'm so mad at myself for being naive about this. I knew better than this. Now, don't misunderstand what I'm saying here. Circumstantial friends matter. Co-workers matter. We should have lots of them. We should be radically loving and kind and care about these kinds of friends, share with them about our faith, invite them to church from time to time, and so on. We should do all that. But if you count all these people as your true friends, you're likely going to be part of our text that a person of many friends may come to a huge disappointment. All of us have circumstantial friends. The second group of friends I think we have is what I call seasonal friends. Seasonal friends. Solomon goes on in Ecclesiastes and he gives this chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. He says, there is a time and a season for everything. Time and a season for everything. Time to be born, a time to die, time to weep, time to laugh, time to tear, time to mend, time to keep, time to throw out. And then he repeats himself. He says, there is a season for every activity under heaven. Now, again, because friendship's such a big deal to me, I remember in the early days of my ministry, I'm busy planting a church, and I built a friendship with a guy, and this friendship just got stronger and stronger over the years. I mean, there were a new family who came to our church. I just felt like when I met this guy, I've hit the lotto here. I mean, he's just incredible, he and his family. They told me they loved my messages, which was rare in those days. They were just so life-changing for him. And he brought us gifts, I'd never owned a pistol before, and I sort of wanted one for some reason. I don't know why, but I remember one day he said, here, I've got several. I want you to have one of these. We'd go out to eat. We spent time with our families together. I mean, he's just this great, great friend. He got involved in our church leadership. We would often, talk about the dreams that our church was going to be. And I'm thinking, this dude is a lifelong friend. One day he shows up. And this was very common for him. He said, hey, after you get done today, I'd like to talk to you just for a few minutes. And it didn't even send a red flag up to me because we often met after church and we would, feedback about how things went that day. And we'd talk about how God was moving and just, how great the church was and such. And so I met with him in my office and he said this. He said, hey, I've taken a new job. I'm going to be moving our family next month. And I just wanted to say thanks for all the great times we've had. And man, we've made some great memories. And I wish you and the church the best. And maybe if you're ever down our way, you can give me a call and maybe we could eat lunch sometime. And I sat stunned in my office. It never occurred to me that this guy's friendship would just be torn out of my life so abruptly. And I thought, wow, this is how a 15-year friendship ends? I'm moving. Thanks for the memories. Hope to see you around. I thought, my goodness, joke's on me. Joke's on me. I had no idea that this friend that I dearly loved would end so abruptly. I thought at least we'd have some conversations about it. I wish someone had taught me that some of our best friends are only going to be seasonal friends. Some of our most meaningful friendships are going to be seasonal. And we may have some 5-year runs or 10-year runs. You may be fortunate like me and have a 15-year friendship. And then for all good reasons, the season changes. Someone moves, somebody spends winters in the South, a divorce, the company gets sold, whatever. But there was some kind of event that redefined the friendship. And maybe we shouldn't be so surprised when seasons change that our friendship deck of cards, if you will, gets reshuffled every now and then. The more I thought about the seasonality of friendships, it took me back that it's really no one's fault. Solomon says, Ecclesiastes, there's a season for things. I sort of reflected back in my early days of planting the church. We only had 25 people when I first went to the church, and they were a little bit older than me. I was in my early 20s, probably 23, 24 years old. And I remember this group of 25 people. They were in their late 20s, early 30s. We had one older couple that we used a lot for wisdom. But man, I loved these folks. I just fell in love. My heart was so much for them. And I would talk to them about the church that God was going to plant through us. I've never been much, I'm green on so many things. I was green on being a pastor. I didn't know how to preach my way out of a tin can. Man, I had none of those. God didn't know anything about friendships at all. But God's always sort of given me this opportunity to rally the troops, to encourage vision. And so I got our 25 together, and man, I told them what kind of church we would be. And I said, I want you guys to be all in. I said, we're going to work hard and play hard, and we're going to be like family with each other. And I still remember vividly that we all gathered in a circle one evening after the Sunday night worship service, and we put our hands together, and one by one, we went around the room, and these families pledged, I'm all in. And every now and then, a guy would say, I'm in this thing for life. A lady would say, I'm in this thing for life. We believe in this so much that we're in this thing all the way. And I left that evening thinking that We're going to do this for 30 or 40 years, and we'll probably all retire together. We'll probably all move into the same nursing home together and eat oatmeal and drool as we share our stories about what God did through us, you know. But here's what happened. Every few years, stuff would happen. A core family would get transferred because of work. Another core family would have to move into a different area because of aging parents. And the one that really hurt was there were other families who would have to move, and they decided that there could be another church that fit their family better. And honestly, guys, the pain of those departures was so deep because every loss felt to me that this dream of this church God had placed in my mind would not go fulfilled. Now, you know, at 58, I see how naive that kind of thinking was on my part. And honestly, I bring a confession. I think I caused a lot of unnecessary pain because of how high I set the bar for how long friendships would last. Today, when I cast vision to our staff and you guys, our church, I say it a little different. I say something like, you know, God has asked us to join Him for this season, to accomplish these things for the greater glory of God. No one knows how long this season will last, so let's lean into this season. Let's enjoy it to the fullest. Let's receive it as a gift from God, that He's going to do a mighty work, and when accomplished, it can only be explained by His power. And when this season comes to a close, let's celebrate all God has done and all the friendships that have been formed as we align ourselves as a church with the God we love. Let's just give it our all during this wonderful season that God has given us. And we just did this a couple of years ago, and I've watched thousands of people here at Highlands respond to that kind of ask, and you've given your all to help us make a difference in serving 33,333 people in our communities. I hope this is helpful to you. Again, I'm not minimizing seasonal friendships at all. They can be fun, life-giving for sure, but we may not retire together. Matter of fact, the people that are your friends today, when you retire, you may have a whole different group of friends, whole different group. A little time out because you're looking a little serious on me. We have two just saints of God over in our country tent, Dan Fleming and Jan, who has been taking the messages from whoever's speaking here and going to a local nursing home. They've been doing this for years. And they'll take the message and they will replay it for this nursing home. Every now and then they'll ask me to go with them and to attend if it's Christmas or something. And so a few months ago, I get to go with them one evening. It's on Thursdays. And I go in and I realize this is pretty exciting for this little group of folks. As I'm walking in, it's like a freeway. I mean, they're coming in on their little rascals and their electric wheelchairs. And I'm telling you what, I had to be careful not to get run over. And I noticed as I'm walking in, Jan and Dan and Roland, those guys are already up there. There's a couple of older ladies sitting fairly close to where I was walking. And this one lady turns over and she says, "Hey, Liz, look over there at that cute young boy," like that. And I'm like, you know, like this. So I go there weekly now and give Liz a hug and all. It's pretty amazing. All right, review. So we have circumstantial friends, and then we have seasonal friends. This last group, as we wrap this up, is what I call here to the end friends. Here to the end friends. When I first was given the opportunity to lead Highlands, it was so far above me. I didn't really know how to lead an organization such as this, and so I thought I've got to get some help. And so I go over to the local Chamber of Commerce and I say, "Hey, if I could learn from someone's leadership in our community, could you give me some names?" And they gave me a name of a lady that's just done tremendous things in our area, and they gave me the name of a couple of guys. And fortunately, I was able to build a friendship with one of these men. And I eventually asked him to be a mentor for me. He's turning 80 this June. And he agreed to be a mentor for me. And he's just been incredible wealth of wisdom. And so one of the things he allowed me to do is he allowed me to get into his network of friends, and he introduced me to these friends. And I thought, his friends, his closest friends, have been friends with him, many of them, for over 50 years, And he has grown much more in success than any of these 50-year-long friends, but he stayed loyal. And he shared his blessing with his friends. And I want to tell you something. When I meet his core of friends, they love this guy. They absolutely love him. And he is the definition of how people have built here to the end friends. And I wanted to learn from him, and he's helped me to sort of begin and hopefully cherish some of those relationships in my own life. Most famous friendship in the Bible was between two guys named David and Jonathan. And you may remember the story. Their love was so deep for each other that not only did they pledge themselves to be friends with each other for life, these guys pledged to watch over each other's kids and grandchildren if one of them should die young. And one of them did die young, Jonathan, on the battlefield, and David held to that pledge. It is a huge gift from God if any of us get to enjoy some here to the end friends. Hey guys, if you have some of those things going, I want to tell you, handle it with care, because these kinds of friendships are so rare and so precious. They're a treasure for sure. Solomon goes on in Proverbs 20 verse 6, and notice what he says. He says, many will claim to be loyal friends, but who can find someone who's truly faithful? This is what all of us want. We know life is better together with a few loyal friends. We're all looking for some friends who will be truly loyal and truly faithful. I did tons of funerals in Buchanan. I don't know why I'm talking about funerals so much today, but go back with me. I did a bunch of funerals in Buchanan County. I was over there for so long, and they still do this to this day. When a loved one dies in Buchanan County, they basically have 2 nights of visitation. And then the 3rd day they have the funeral, and often the 4th day will be the burial at the cemetery. So it's a long, extended event. And because of these events taking so long, they'll often get different people to speak besides the pastor at the funeral service during the nights of visitation. A few years ago, this person had died, and they had asked his best friend to eulogize him on one of the visitation nights. Of course, I'm there, and I'm listening to this guy, and I'm telling you, I mean, you could tell. And the way they do it in McCann County is the casket is right here underneath the podium, and it's open. And this guy's giving all the classics. He said, this guy was, he would take a bullet for me. My buddy right here, he was with me in every major decision. He was like family for me. This guy was a guy I could count on no matter what time of night. I could call him, and he was there for me. And then he said that classic line, he was like a brother to me. And then after he does this for 20 minutes or so, he goes over and sort of collapses in a chair there. And honestly, I'm a little worried about him because I understand how much he loved his buddy. And I'm thinking, he's a little older now. I wonder how he's going to do this. He's alone. He's lost his best friend. He'll probably never find another buddy that will be as loyal to him as this guy in the box right there. To which Solomon would say, there is a friend that sticks closer to us than a brother. Most theologians believe that Solomon was talking about Jesus in those early days. Even though we can have some here to the end friends, I hope you do. If you have a relationship with Jesus, hey, I'll tell you something, he'll stick closer to you than your best brother, all right? His friendship is not circumstantial. Friendship with Jesus is not seasonal. It's not even a here to the end deal, because when you are fortunate enough to establish a friendship with Jesus, it extends into eternity. It lasts forever. And as I've gone to all of our locations and just seen what God's doing in all your families and your hearts and your lives, I've gotten so much feedback from you. I look at all of you and I wonder how many of you have a true friendship with Jesus. I'm not talking about church attendance. I'm not talking about serving, checking off some Christian hoops. I'm not talking about any of that stuff. Are you a friend with Jesus Christ? I hope so. Because if you've ever lost a here-to-the-end friend, man, you know what a disappointment that can bring. Jesus is a friend forever. He will be with you through your highs and lows. What a friend we have in Him. I so much want for you to have some here-to-the-end friends. They make life so much better together. But even more so, I want all of you to have a friendship with Jesus. He's an incredible friend, loyal to the point of death, unconditionally loving, forgiving, full of mercy and grace. And here's the deal, guys. I want you to catch this at every location. Jesus offers His friendship to every one of us. Every one of us. Now, Revelation says, John says that he saw Jesus, and Jesus is standing at the door of your heart, and He's knocking. He's not going to force His way in. You got to open the door and let Him in. Man, I so desire for you to have a friendship with Jesus today. It's unbelievable, and it's available to us all. He's a friend that will never end up in a box, okay? He's a friend that's not going to move away. Jesus will be a friend that will never abandon you. The scripture says He will never leave you alone. Jesus is not only the God of our universe, but He personally is a friend that sticks closer than a brother. Would you pray with me? Lord, thank you so much for the thousands of us probably that have established this friendship with Jesus. And you might say, well, how do I have that friend? Man, I want that. Real simple. Jesus made it real simple. He went to a cross and He died on that cross so that a friendship could be made with Him. And if you will trust Jesus and invite Him into your heart and trust what He did on the cross for you and just ask Him to come into your life, He'll be a forever friend that you so desperately need. For those of us that have that friendship, oh, what a gift. That when we transition from this life, that we will be with Him forever, and we will also be with all of our here-to-the-end friends that know Him. And so, if you're here today and you've never established a friendship with Jesus, please do. It's so simple. We'll help you with that. For those of you that have some here-to-the-end friends, man, cherish those. Call them, let them know how much you appreciate them. We're thankful for seasonal friends. Some of those are the richest we have. And we're thankful for our circumstantial friends. May we be kind and loving. Thank you today, Lord, what you're doing in our church. We give it to you afresh. Thank you that you're a friend of us. Have your will and way now in Jesus' name. Amen.